The Self-Publishing Formula is looking for beta testers for its 101 course on self-publishing. After the success of the Advanced Facebook Ads for Authors course, Mark Dawson is now creating a course aimed solely at authors who are starting out. If you're trying to launch your first book or trying to become commercially successful with your books, then this course is for you. It will cover everything you need to set yourself up for success as an indie author. Beta testers will get the course for free in return for feedback. You can sign up for your chance to become a tester at selfpublishingformula.com and we'll notify those selected. Hello and welcome to podcast number 32 from the Self-Publishing Formula.
Two writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello, welcome. Mark and I have just returned from sunny Florida. Very sunny Florida, wasn't it, Mark?
It was gorgeous, very sunny.
It was it was like mid-90s every day, which is melting point for anyone from our part of Europe. And I don't know what the percentage humidity was, but close to 100. And you and I both went for runs at various points, and I don't know about you, but I came back as if I'd been swimming.
Well, I did actually go swimming as well, so that was my favourite bit in some ways. It was going out for a run, because I was waking up at dawn, because my body clock didn't quite get round to American time, and then going for a run about 6:30 in the morning, and then going for a swim, and this water was so warm. My God, it was amazing.
What, you talking about swimming in the sea or your swimming pool?
In the sea.
So were you not alarmed by the various signs that said this is stingray season, that you have to walk in a certain way in the sea to avoid treading on a stingray?
The stingray shuffle? No, not really. I mean, I've been to the Maldives more than once, so there's loads and loads of stingrays in the Maldives. I think as long as you're careful, it's not really a problem.
Yeah, I saw one when I was running.
Yes, I saw a photograph.
In the shallows there, which was enough for me to think I'll have a little swim in the pool. When I got back to my salubrious hotel, I say salubrious hotel, I was slumming it next door to your properly salubrious hotel. So you were at the Tradewinds. And let me just set out then how this podcast is going to work. So we met up live. That's Mark, myself and John Dyer, the three people who run Self-Publishing Formula. And it was the first time that we had a properly sort of organised live event where we invited anybody, as you will know from previous podcasts. If you listen to the podcast, you've taken a course or you're in part of the Facebook groups, etc., to come and say hello. And that evening went absolutely brilliantly. It was such fun, as was the whole event. Lots of people came and tapped us on the shoulder and introduced themselves. And that gave us a lot of opportunity to record some interviews with some really interesting stories and people. And one particular person called Elicia Hyder tapped you on the shoulder, Mark, and you had a chat with her and she told you her story. And we decided straight away that we have to share her story because it was wonderful. So please stick around for that. You're going to hear Elicia talking, the feature interview in this podcast, and it's an interview you won't want to miss for lots of reasons. So that's coming up in a moment. But before we do that, let's reflect a bit on NINC and a bit on SPF Live. So first of all, NINC, which we should say, Mark, is Novelists Incorporated, Novelists Inc. It's a criteria membership. So, for instance, I could only go to the First Word Day, which was the Thursday, whereas the conference itself had other sessions, including advanced sessions, one of which was led by you for members. And what is the criteria? I think you've got to have had 2 or 3 published books, is that right?
Published books and have sold, I think, $5,000, something along those lines. Okay,
so you are on the selling side of professional authorship, which I'm not yet, and I know a few people listening to the podcast won't be there yet, others will be. A very author-centric conference, which I really liked. So lots of people talking about writing and publishing, as well as marketing and so on. It wasn't just done from, like the book fairs, for instance, really come from a publishing perspective. You led a session on Facebook advertising, of course, and how did that go down?
I did 3 sessions, actually. I was on a panel on the first day talking about looking at 7 people submitted their marketing problems, and 3 of us on the panel, plus Porter Anderson, who moderated it, looked at the problems and made some suggestions. So did that on the Thursday, and then on the Friday I did 2 hours on Facebook ads, which when I actually realised that I was being slated to do 2 hours, I thought that might be a little bit ambitious, but as it turned out, it was plenty of time. I had stuff in the locker that I could have brought out if necessary. But no, it was great. I loved all of it. The session on the Thursday was quite interesting because I hadn't been to NINC before, and I did find it quite difficult to get an idea of the level of the attendees. And as soon as I looked through the case studies, I realised that they were probably... It's easy to generalise, obviously, so there are plenty of people who are selling more than I am and who are better at marketing than I am. But converse of that, there were plenty of people who didn't really know the first things about things like mailing lists and covers and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite difficult to pitch the advice that we were giving in the first session, and then it was quite hard for me to pitch the Facebook advertising session, because that obviously is a reasonably advanced author strategy. But what I ended up doing was breaking it down into a kind of a basic mailing list growth session in the first hour, and then I did, I think it was 13 things that are working on Facebook right now in the second hour. So things like live video. I did a Facebook live demonstration from the stage, which thankfully worked after a bit of fiddling, so that went down quite well. And then looking at things like pixels, retargeting, tracking, all that kind of stuff, all the things that are working really well, lead gen, the things that Facebook's doing well right now. And yeah, by the end of it, it was great. I sat down and BookBub, the next one's up, Katie Donlan from BookBub. And slightly surreal to see BookBub using me as one of their case studies for their ads program, which it was nice. I had a good chat with them beforehand as well.
Well, we know you've arrived in the industry, but that's certainly confirmation of that. I mean, my observation from sitting there listening to the first panel, and I should say, even though I'm not a member of NINC, I did sneak in on the basis I was going to take some snaps of you for some of the other sessions. And my observation straight away was that we surround ourselves with people who are really at the leading edge of digital marketing for their books. So they're either Facebook advertising, they're thinking about it, they're into social media advertising, they want a piece of the action, they understand that this is where people are growing their lists and growing their sales and making their living. And yet walk into the room at NINC, and I would say 50 to maybe 75% of the room felt to me quite resistant to that kind of new way of doing what they consider as a new way of doing things. 25% of the room definitely all over it. So
no, I don't think that resistance is the wrong word. I think just don't know, are curious. Okay. I mean, there was an example in the first session that I did, the Q&A, when I said something. There's a question about one of the authors there had done a deal with a publisher, and all they'd bought was the first book in her series. Now, and she said, "What should I do? How can I get them to promote it?" And my first reaction to that was, that's a bad deal, because if the publisher doesn't push the first book and it's not successful, number one, that might not be your fault. And number two, if they don't want to publish the second book, then you're going to have a hell of a struggle promoting a series where you don't control the first book. And my kind of slightly off-the-cuff reaction to that was that that's a bad deal. I wouldn't be interested in a traditional deal like that. That was without me really thinking that the person next to me owns and runs a small independent press. So that was kind of, I tempered my language after that, but it was I think they were definitely interested in what we had to say, and I did have a few people afterwards, because there was a couple of the questions in that first panel I didn't get to speak, because the other two panelists were quite enthusiastic about answering those particular problems. And a couple of people afterwards came up to me and said, look, there were people in the audience who were just saying, I wish they'd let Mark speak, which that's quite, it's very flattering. But I think it didn't necessarily have to be me saying that. I think it could have been anyone from our community really switched on with, as you say, social media advertising and the new ways of doing things. That was what they were interested in. It was about mailing lists and advertising, and it wasn't necessarily, they weren't fixated upon a traditional deal and what a publisher could do for them.
Yeah, I suppose the point I was making is that for someone like me who's on their way towards launching themselves into this market, we are so surrounded by people who are doing it successfully or trying to do it now. There's a fear maybe that this is a saturated market and that it's almost too late, you've missed the bus. And then you have a sense briefly of the wider author world and realise it's a fraction. It's 25% of the room at most, I think, are really on top of this. And you say resistant is absolutely the wrong word, that others want to be a part of it. One or two were. I just sensed in some of the comments, one or two were kind of, thought it was like witchcraft or something. But yeah, they want to be.
It is like witchcraft. Yeah, it is. I'm regularly sacrificing virgins in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. I know that was Salisbury, isn't it? Stonehenge. That's what it's all about. But that's an exciting prospect for me. I felt quite buoyed by that. It reminded me, reinforced the fact that we are at the leading edge. If you're listening to this podcast, you already have a significant advantage over many, many other authors, fellow authors. So that's that was a positive message, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That is something that is worth remembering, and I often forget it. It's because we associate ourselves with other successful self-published authors, that those are the people that I listen to, or all of the Facebook groups that we run are full of people interested in doing the things that we're doing. It is very easy to kind of draw your focus in too closely and then not see that the majority, that we are the vanguard. The majority of people don't know what a mailing list is, and that's so basic. It's like kind of, I almost can't get my head around that, but that is the truth of it. If some people don't know what a mailing list is, that's the most fundamentally important asset that any author can have these days, not just an independently published author, any author whatsoever.
Good. And now let's talk a little bit about SPF. This is going to be a little bit course-centric, so I'm not going to apologise for that. It just is the way it is, that we've got quite a lot of students who've taken the course and had really successful launches with it. And really, I'm going to say it's changed their lives, because that's what they said to us when they came and said hello to us at our party, or the people that John Dyer and I dropped in on our way down. We drove down from New York, having met the Teachable crew in New York, and we dropped in on several authors. And "You've changed my life" was something we heard more than once. That's great. So it's a little bit unapologetically, this bit is going to be about the course and Alicia's interview coming up in a moment. But it was very impressive to be, drinking a beer at night, surrounded by people who are making $50,000 a month, $30,000 a month, $20,000, $30,000 a month if you go around the table, spending maybe $5,000 on Facebook ads, and whose careers have just shot off stratospherically, and they're making not just a living, which I think is an admirable aim. So I will be aiming for is to make a kind of normal salary. I'll be delighted if I can do that. But here's people who thought that was their dream 18 months ago and now are making what you might describe as a good city salary, the kind of thing that you read about in the papers. And it was incredible and impressive people, right?
Yeah, it was really, there was a real highlight. I mean, we basically threw a party on was it the Tuesday night or the Wednesday night?
The Wednesday
night.
Yeah.
So we took over one of the bars in the resort. I don't know exactly how many people came, but we must have cycled through 120 over the course of the evening.
Well, I've got the bar bill, if that's anything to go by, and that was that would back that up. Yes,
that was a reason. Yeah, it was a reasonable bar bill, but we thought that was the least we could do was to cover that. And the numbers were great, and we had all the Drafted Digital guys came. So Chris, Kevin, Aaron, Dan Wood. We had Mark from Kobo came, plenty of the industry guys came, but then kind of beyond that, we had people who'd come not to the conference, but they'd come to meet us, which was, we had Michelle drove 4 hours to come to see us. We had Sean flew in from Atlanta specifically to have breakfast with us, and then to leave the same day. I think we had Nathan Van Coops came along. We had plenty of people who were in the kind of Florida region. In fact, Elicia came. She came specifically with her mum just to come and meet us, and that was really flattering. And got to hear some really fabulous stories and some success stories, apart from the ones that the guys that you met as you made your midlife crisis road trip down the down the East Coast. It's really wonderful to hear these people who are, as you say, have earned enough money to change their lives through a fairly simple advertising program. Really wonderful to hear that. Yeah,
it was really good. And what was interesting, I think it was quite good for NINC as well, because people like Elicia and Michelle, who you just mentioned, didn't really know about NINC, but they now know about it through us, and so they're going to be quite keen, I think, to be a bigger part of it in the future. There's quite a few authors on the doorstep there in Orlando. And then, yes, and John and I then picked up a final interview over on the West Coast with Charlotte Bird, who's another stellar student of the course, who obviously got the right books, and she was commercially minded and orientated about it from the beginning. She chose her genre, romance, I think bordering on erotic romance for her. She chose her genre based on what was going to work commercially, and she hadn't even read romance. She wasn't a romance reader before she started, and she's got 3 books, and she's now doing an average $10,000 month. She's had some really big months in the past, and will be very, very successful in the future, thanks to Facebook advertising, which we mention from time to time, Facebook advertising, but it
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You do hear that. You do hear that. It is the key to digital online marketing, and that's not just in the author space, but it is still at the moment is the key. We've got our fingers in lots of social media advertising pies, and we're expanding that all the time, but understanding, getting to grips with Facebook ads still is what you should be thinking about if you're serious about earning money from your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, look, I promised you this interview with Elicia. So Elicia came up and spoke to Mark, and then I talked to her. And not only did I get to do a sit-down video interview with Elicia for our own purposes, really for marketing the course, because she's been a really successful story for us, but her story was so touching, and she was such a wonderful person that we wanted to share her story with you. So that's going to be our feature interview today.
I had completed the first 2 books in the Soul Summoner series, completed writing them, and went through rounds of editing and decided I'm going to pitch this book to my 3 top picks of agents. Did a lot of research, found out who those people were. We won't name names, but I did. And within 3 days of sending that email, I heard back from one of them that was like, hey, let's talk about this book, which, you know, I'm freaking out because
That's an amazing response.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Astounding response, because it doesn't happen. You know, it's not the norm in this business. So I called everybody that I knew and told them, you know, like, somebody's interested in my book. And then 6 hours later, the same day, during dinner, I got another phone call from my doctor saying, we think it's cancer. We need you to come back in the morning for some more tests. I had been going through different tests for some suspicious lumps and bumps where they shouldn't be, and that it turned out that it was cancer. And so I had to call everybody back, this time in tears for a completely different reason, because, you know, it was pretty certain at that point that I was getting ready to go through a really big battle.
An interesting day in your life that you won't forget.
Yeah. The best of times, the worst of times.
Good start for a book. Yeah.
It is. I wonder if anybody's ever done that.
So you decided, obviously, you had to put the book publishing on hold at that point.
Yeah, I contacted the agency and I was like, funny story. I just got a cancer diagnosis right after I talked to you. And so I'm going to have to put the book on hold for now and try not to die, you know. And so they did, you know, as the industry is, you know, they don't have time to wait. And they were like, well, you know, be in touch when this is all over with, and we wish you luck. Peace out, you know. Yeah. And so I thought that everything was just, at that point, like, we're going to have to start over in however long it takes me to beat this thing. So it was really disheartening, but the best thing that I took away from it is I knew this book has potential. This book can go places. And before I became a writer, I was in graphic and web design for 13 years. So I knew a bit about marketing, online marketing, knew nothing about book marketing. But I knew, because every query how-to website tells you you need to have a platform. You know, you need to have people to market this book to make it appealing to a publisher. So I started Googling how to build your platform. And I knew, you know, email's king. You need to start building an email list. Well, I had an email list at that time, and it was 6 people. One of them was me. One of them was my mom. The other one was my sister, you know.
It's a familiar story for when people start their list.
Sure, absolutely. But I did some Googling how to build your email following as a writer, and I found Joanna Penn. And so I started just tearing through her website, reading her books. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine of information. And in one of her interviews that she did, she talked to Nick Stevenson. And I'm like, okay, well, he's got this free series out there, you know, like these freebies, you know, we'll see. It's free, you know. Well, I got his 3 videos, and by the end of listening to them, about a week later, I had gone from 6 subscribers to 60. And I ended up publishing a book that I never intended to publish to try to build that following based on his advice. And it really just kind of snowballed. It was really unexpected.
Was this a giveaway you published?
I actually published the book first on Wattpad, because my niece, who's 15, loves Wattpad, and she's like, hey, put your book on this website because I want to read it. And I literally just did it for her. And then people started finding it and reading it. And then it ended up winning Best Contemporary Adult Romance, like in 2015 for Wattpad.
Go your niece.
Well, right, yeah, completely. So that was kind of the springboard into, you know, starting to find followers. And then with Nick building the mailing list. And then Nick interviewed Mark. And Mark started talking about Facebook advertising. And I'm like, haha, I can do this. Like, I have a background in this stuff. I can do this. I don't need Mark Dawson. Yeah. I have 13 years experience.
Who needs Mark Dawson?
Who needs Mark Dawson? Like, thanks for the tip. Thanks for telling me it was there. I got this, you know? And so I didn't sign up for Mark's course the first go around. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And I wasted probably $2,000 in failed Facebook ads. And I could not figure out why they were failing. You know, I knew that there was one puzzle piece in there. And I don't know what that puzzle piece is, but I'll bet Mark Dawson knows. And so I started emailing. I'm like, please let me in the course. I'm really sorry that I didn't sign up the first time. I am humbled and ashamed. Like, please let me in. But you guys didn't let me in.
Sorry about that. I mean, I don't know what to say really, apart from we're hard-nosed.
Totally. Like, sign up while you can, because they mean it when they say it's limited.
We get the course ready for a launch, and it's in a right state in between when we're doing all the updates. So we're scared it wouldn't be right to sell you an incomplete, not updated course. That's my excuse.
Whatever helps you sleep that night.
Yeah. Now, on that, before we just move into when you move forward with Mark's instruction, just tell us where you are with your treatment at this stage.
I am almost declared cancer-free. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is one of the few cancers that they use the word curable with. It's a brutal treatment. I was very, very sick. I'm at a high risk for a lot of stuff because of the treatment. But I have to have one more PET scan in December, and if that one's clear, then I don't have to have any more. I've had 2 clear PET scans, no evidence of cancer, so that's huge.
Well, from SPF, we wish you all the best with that, and that's really good news to hear.
Thank you.
But let's focus on the positives then. Well, that's another positive. That's the most important positive, is that you're well on the road to recovery there. But you got to the point then where you wasted a bit of money, tried to make Facebook ads work, and that didn't really work for you?
Well, backing up too, when it came time to publish that book that the agent was interested in, I ended up turning down going the traditional route because the advice had worked so well. I'm like, I can do this on my own. And the last bit of that puzzle trying to figure out was the bit that I was missing of Facebook advertising. And once I finally got into the course, I found that missing puzzle piece on the first day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing wrong. And so I was able to go back and tweak those ads and fix them and set things up the right way. And using his strategies on how to monitor those ads, it made all the difference in the world. Absolutely made all the difference in the world. I had done really well with lead generation ads before I joined the course, but as far as actually selling books, I could not move books. I couldn't hardly give them away,
So what was it? What were the techniques that you got from Mark that made the difference?
Do you want me to tell people that missing?
Well, you can. Let's hint at it. There's some really specific tools that are out there and that are hidden to mere mortals that even a person with my background, I didn't even know existed. I knew that in theory these tools had to be out there, but I had no idea where to go to find them. I had no idea how to set them up. And once I was given that map to be like, okay, this is where you find that pot of gold, it's right here, then it rocking and rolling since then. The treasure map.
Yeah.
So can you clue us in a little bit, to use an American type expression, on what sort of income and figures you're getting now?
When I first started this, it took me about 5 months to sell enough books to buy a new mailbox for my front yard. And I'm standing like happy dancing at Home Depot because, oh my gosh, I'm using $114 of my book money to buy a new mailbox.
That felt like free money to you.
Totally. Like I was, that was better than the New York Times.
Yeah. Now you're making that in a couple of hours.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am spending about $5,000 a month in advertising. This month will be my biggest ad spend. Just on Facebook advertising, I'm probably spending $120 a day, which is really small compared to a lot of people's ad spend. And I will have, hopefully this will be my new biggest sales month, somewhere around $20,000. So that's $15,000 in profit.
Making $15,000 a month on your books.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I like check my reports, and just on Amazon sales alone, not counting, I have one book in Kindle Unlimited, not counting any of the other platforms. I mean, it's over $600 a day just in that. It's absolutely overwhelming. It's really, really overwhelming. But it's a lot of work too, and a lot of people think that there's some sort of magic formula, or that, oh my gosh, she must have the best book ever, or Mark Dawson must just be the best author ever, which he's a fantastic author. And my books aren't bad, but I've said this to other people, there's nothing special, really special about my work. Like, I'm never going to be on Oprah, I'm never going to, win any medals or anything like that.
But you're on the SPF podcast, which is slightly better than Oprah, right?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I didn't have pajamas or a toothbrush last night. No. I'm like, I'm going to hang out and do the podcast.
I'm not sure how that comes across to people listening, but this did all start in a bar last night. But anyway, like all good stories. But let's just take you back for a second. So there's this day when you think you've got a breakthrough, you've got an offer potentially coming from an agent, which would lead to a traditional publishing deal. Then things go south for you with an illness. Fast forward through to today, actually, I wonder how things would have worked out had you not had that phone call from the doctor. You may have had a traditional deal.
I may have, and I may have gotten, a $8,000 advance if I was lucky, probably more like $1,000 for a non-published person with no following, but with a decent book. And then who knows if it would have earned out and if I would have ever seen another penny, because nobody is going to work your brand the way that you do. No publisher is ever going to invest in your future as a writer. They're going to invest in that book, and they're going to try to squeeze every penny that they can, and then they're going to move on to the next author. I'm promoting the first book in my series. I just released book 3, and I'm promoting book 1 that I released a year ago harder than I've ever promoted it. And that wouldn't have happened in the traditional world.
Okay, we should just point out that we are reclined on sun lounges.
Totally, next to a tiki bar.
Next to a tiki bar on the beach.
Looking at the ocean.
In St. Pete's in Florida. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because they're preparing the bar for opening, and there's a lot of, I don't know how much ice they're shoveling into that thing, but it's making a lot of noise. Anyway, we'll have a cold one in a minute. And just to reiterate what you said, we had this conversation just over a coffee. We have these super authors on. We've had Marie Force on, Rachel Abbott recently, and when they start talking about the secret to their success, it always turns out to be the same thing, which is what you've excelled at, which is really just working hard.
It is working hard. Yeah, people are really shocked, and authors get really depressed when I tell them that secret. I'm like, I work 17 hours a day. I'm a wife. I have 5 children. I have no college degree. I work really, really hard, and I believe in what I'm doing. I have enough faith in my work. I am passionate enough about it because I know I may get that phone call that the cancer's back, and I might not beat it the next time. I'm investing everything that I've got, because if the book fails, it's going to be because the book sucks. It's not going to be because I didn't give it its very best chance. I listen to a lot of constructive and some very deconstructive criticism, from other writers, from other professionals. I had a book designer through Nick Stevenson look at my cover and go, it sucks, start over. As a designer myself, that was really hard to hear, but he was right. I redid the cover, sales started picking up, reviews started coming in, and like I said, it just snowballs. It builds and builds and builds, but you never quit. So many people, because you have really, really sucky days as an author. You have really hard days where you're like, why am I even doing this, And then a lot of people give up. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what you're doing. And you have to be willing to put your time and your money where your heart is, and work it.
Well, it's a heartwarming story, Elicia,
well,
and you're clearly motivated to work hard and beat things, and I can't help but think that played a part in your beating the cancer and your success as an author. And long may that continue. Let's have a $30,000 a month soon.
Absolutely. Let's please. I'm excited because for the first time since the series started 10 months ago, I'm out of Kindle Unlimited. So I'm really excited to see what happens on all of the other platforms now. And honestly, I really expected my sales and my rankings to just, plummet after I pulled out, because I did really well in KU. and it's gone up. It's done the exact opposite. Rather than going down, it's gone up. Even my sales just on Amazon. So it's really encouraging, really, really encouraging, because I know that I'm just 10 months into this. I'm just in the beginning of my career. There's a lot of time ahead. There are a lot of books ahead. I'm very excited.
What a pleasure it was to talk to Elicia. As I said, we were lying on the sun decks because where else would you record a podcast interview in the middle of the afternoon, sort of 95 Fahrenheit. And as you heard and I mentioned in the interview, they were setting up the bar next to us and pouring ice into a large hollow container to make it as loud as possible. But I could have spent all afternoon chatting to Elicia, listening to her story, and we all send our positive thoughts to her. What a fantastic story, her recovery from cancer, coinciding with this getting to grips with Facebook advertising. And as she said in the interview, had she not been diagnosed with this very serious cancer, she may have done that traditional deal and her life would not be where it is today.
Yeah, it's funny how things pan out sometimes. And I mean, it's one of those situations where I hear stories like that. People come up to me and it's immediate. It's like, we have to share that. And there are other things that she didn't mention in the story that I won't mention now, but that just make her story even more remarkable. Some of the things that's happened to her in her life and the things that she's done. I mean, it just kind of so impressive, and I'm so pleased that she's really nailing it. And I mean, one thing we did afterwards, I was invited to dinner with the guys from Apple on the Thursday night, and they said, do you have another author who would like to come along? So my first thought was to see if she'd like to come, and she stayed another night. Her and her mum booked another night in the hotel, and we had an amazing dinner with Apple, really, really wonderful. So I got to introduce her to those guys, and hopefully that will help her to broaden her reach so that she can start to sell books on iBooks as well as on Amazon. So, and just such a lovely person. It was a real pleasure to get to know her.
Yeah, she's somebody who makes things happen for herself, and it's no surprise at all when you hear the interview, is it, that she wasn't defeated by her illness, and she's not going to be defeated by that, and she's going to be successful in her career because she's got a husband who's serving with the military, who's gone, and think until spring next year. They have 5 children between them at home, and she gets on with business and she makes it work. And I love the slightly ballsy element to her as well, which is that she decided she didn't need our course, she didn't need any help, threw herself into it, and very quickly, after a couple of $1,000, realised that she did need some pointers. And wow, she has not looked back since she's unlocked the key to it. If you want to look up Elicia, let's spell her name for you. It's Elicia, and her surname is Hyder, Hyder, paranormal suspense and romance, I should say. She's in our Facebook groups as well, so you can say hello to her there. That was great, and we have gathered quite a lot of, we've gathered lots of really interesting material during our time in Florida and the wider states. And one of the things that I did is, as many authors as I could get to, I asked them a set of questions really about how they write, where they write, what sort of approach they have to writing, how they're marketing, who does their marketing, how they split their time. The same questions to lots of different authors, and we're going to put that together for a special podcast at some point. So you can just sit back or go on your run, put this in your ear and just listen to lots of different people doing the same thing that you're doing, talking about their particular approach to it, just to try and spark some interest and creativity in the way that we all think about how we approach our day writing and our careers as authors. That's coming up soon. And we should also trail ahead that we've got a very useful interview indeed. I don't think you haven't heard this one yet, Mark, but it's a very useful interview indeed with a man called Ricardo Fayette, who is one of the co-founders of Readsy, which you may have heard of. Readsy is a sort of one-stop shop to find the professional services that you're going to need as a self-published author. So we're talking about editing, proofing, book covers, etc. All the subjects that we deal with quite regularly. And Ricardo did this brilliant interview where we just stepped through. It was quite selfish because I'm thinking from my point of view, what do I do next? Then what do I do? Then who do I need? And Ricardo stepped us through that process, talked about how we should approach particular editors and what their roles would be and how much they would cost. And not only does Ricardo talk about that entire process of everything you would need to go from your draft to getting your book published and into the market, but we have a very special announcement. We're going to save this as a secret for next week, Mark.
Yeah, let's save the details, but let's say it's worth listening. As we're going to run a contest with a pretty valuable prize. In fact, several quite valuable prizes. So it's definitely worth listening to next week's podcast.
Yeah, that'll be Ricardo next week. So thank you to our special guest, Elicia Hyder. Mark and I have slept 5 hours and 27, I think, from where I'm sitting at the moment, having landed at Heathrow from Los Angeles this morning. So I'm ready for bed. Actually, weirdly, I'm not. Weirdly, I've now started waking up again. What do I do now? Do I drink? I don't know.
I'd get really drunk. That's got to be the solution. That's the solution to most things, though.
Yeah, it is the Dawson approach. Yeah. Great. We'll speak to you next week.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.